Hello and welcome to Empathy in Motion, the power of employee volunteering. My name is Chris Jarvis, I'm with Realized Worth, and today we're going to talk about the journey of the volunteer. Today we want to ask the question, are all volunteers the same? And here's a hint, they're not. We're going to look at the journey of the volunteer, stage 1, 2, and 3, and then we'll finally try to understand how we can recognize what stage a person might be at based on some indications of their behavior and then what they might need from you. Volunteers can burn out, even though they're very enthused to be involved in a program or working with a community and they're intrinsically motivated to do it. There's still this thing that happens where you can just get very tired and exhausted and emotionally depleted. One of the reasons this can happen is because volunteers, those of us who volunteer, we're kind of all treated pretty one-dimensionally. You're either a volunteer or you're not. The fact is, there are actually 3 stages in the journey of a volunteer. Let me give you an example of what I mean that might help illustrate this point. Let's say I decide to take a trip to Greece. I decide to go because I've seen something about Greece in a brochure, or I've heard somebody say it was a great place to go and I have vacation time. So I make the decision to go. When I arrive, I go to the tourist hotel. I get on the tourist bus, I go to the tourist beach, and I eat at all the tourist restaurants. Why? Because I'm a tourist. That's what you do when you go somewhere for the first time. You don't know all the best places to go, and you don't know much about what's going on in the area. You're there for the first time. This is stage 1 space. Why did I go? Because I was casually curious about Greece and what it might have to offer. And this is my level of contribution. But if after a period of time I decide to go back to Greece on a regular basis, I'm not so much a tourist anymore, am I? I don't stay at the tourist hotel and I don't go to the tourist beach. I find cool restaurants and a cool part of town. I'm a bit more like a traveler than a tourist. I've got some opinions and ideas about the place and what it can offer and what I like and don't like. I come back not because I'm casually curious anymore, but because there's something that I'm looking to discover. It's meaningful discovery. Now, let's say I fall in love with Greece, and I find a place, and I buy that place, and I live there 2 months out of the year. I am a lot more like a guide. I have a place there, I kind of belong there. I'm not Greek, but I have opinions about their politics, and I definitely know where I like to go and what I like to do when I am there. And I go because there's some sort of intentional alignment with who I am and this place that I live in. In fact, when I'm with my friends, the other 10 months out of the year, back where I lived the rest of my life, I talk about Greece. Why? Because someone's paying me to? No, but because it's an expression of who I am and my values. Now think about volunteering. When people come for the first time, they're a lot like a tourist. They don't know what to do. They don't even know what may be expected of them. What is their level of contribution? Not very much. They need an experience to fall in love with this idea. They're there because they're casually curious. It may or may not be a good fit for them, but they need the free space to discover that. If they do discover that, they move to something that's more meaningful in terms of why they're looking for value or something intrinsically motivating for them to come back. That's stage 2. And it's very different than stage 1 because in stage 2 we have some attitudes and ideas about what it is that we're doing and why it's important. It may not be fully formed as it will be in stage 3, which is where we become this guide type person and there's this intentional alignment and we bring people into this experience because we feel it's so valuable, we want to share it with other people, with those friends and family around us. Now, what we recommend at Realized Worth is that you build your entire program around these 3 stages: the tourist, the traveler, the guide. We meet people at their highest level of contribution, meaning we give them what they need based on what stage they're at. And we allow them to participate at that level as well. So this is what we call a missional model. We find our guides who are probably volunteering 100 to 1,000 hours a year with something that expresses their values. And we ask them to play a leadership role in developing travelers and creating free space for tourists to fall in love with volunteering. This is how we meet people at their highest level of contribution and what we mean by a missional model. So that may all sound good, but how do you know what stage people are at? It's a good question. There's some indicators, and I would encourage you to take a look at what is on this screen right here in front of you, that outline what the difference is between a tourist, a traveler, and a guide in terms of how they may behave. I remember when I went to a soup kitchen in Halifax, Nova Scotia, which is in Canada, for the first time in my life. I went to this meal, this community meal, and I obviously didn't belong. I wasn't a dummy and I was a hard worker, but I found myself standing around not wanting to interrupt or get in the way. And tourists are a lot like that. We want to help, we want to participate, but we need permission and some guidance to do so. Versus the guides who were at this community meal, who knew exactly what to do, they knew everybody's name, but they were also includers. And eventually a guide came and got me involved, and looked after me the entire time. Which brings us to what tourists, travelers, and guides may need from you if you're involved in organizing or supervising or managing a volunteer event. Take a moment and pause this video and just look at the different lists and compare between them. Does the event that you're planning or overseeing or even participating in have an opportunity to be met at that highest level of contribution so that you are able to contribute where and when you're able, not beyond it, but not beneath it either? Which brings us back to the volunteer burnout. The reason volunteer burnout happens is when we treat guides or high-level travelers, stage 3, stage 2 people, like they're tourists. We ask them to do the most basic menial tasks, and I understand why that happens because they're completely reliable. But when someone can contribute here, and we keep asking them to contribute here, people get tired, bored, and emotionally exhausted, and they end up moving on. This is why meeting people at their highest level of contribution and understanding these 3 stages is absolutely crucial. So the 3 stages help us understand that volunteers are not all the same, but they're actually on a journey. And they have different needs at different stages. They also have different contributions to make at different stages. So developing long-term committed volunteers requires that we understand this and design our programs to accommodate this reality. Guides should lead, travelers should support, and tourists, well, they basically just attend and have a good time. Which brings us to an important consideration of the difference between efficiency and effectiveness. Most nonprofits are able to run on very few resources and get a lot done, which means they have to be efficient. But first stage space is not efficient. First stage space creates a lot of space for people to come in as tourists to fall in love with volunteering, and allows us to accommodate this understanding of the journey of the volunteer. That is effective, helping people have an experience to develop their own reasons beyond casual curiosity to meaningful discovery. To take this journey of a volunteer is incredibly effective, but it may not be efficient. So, when we're designing programs, managing programs, we may want to begin to understand if we want to be effective in convincing people about the importance of our cause, our mission, our community, we need more people to have this experience to be effective, and we may have to give up some of our efficiency in order to do so. But we can talk about that more in detail another time. And that is what we mean by the journey of a volunteer. Thank you for joining us. I'll see you right here next time.